3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gringo Show. Yeah. Hope you're all doing well today. We're so excited to have you. We have a great show for you tonight. We have Luis Carlos Ugalde, former head of the National Election Institute, who comes to us with a lot of experience dealing with presidential candidates who just don't want to admit that they lost an election. So we'll talk to him about that, and we're also going to talk about the death of Argentinian soccer star Diego Maradona, his life, and the impact here in Mexico. So stay with us for the next 20 minutes. No need to move over to Instagram. Miguel got another tattoo. Elisa's life is so fabulous and happy in Tulum, even though in reality she's miserable and lonely. And thanks, Seb, your dog is adorable, and oh my God, it does the craziest things. But instead, you can stay with us and get a dose of reality, the important things that are happening in the world that you need to know. For example, the village of fucking Austria. No, I'm not saying anything bad about this town. I've never been there, but really the name of the town is fucking. Named in the 6th century after a guy named Focko. And so in German with the suffix ing, it means the place of Focko's people. But the fucking town, population 106, was tired of having their fucking sign stolen and all of the tourist attention. And I'm literally quoting this from Wikipedia. The Germans all want to see Mozart's house in Salzburg. The Americans want to see where The Sound of Music was filmed. The Japanese want to check out Hitler's birthplace in Braunau. But for the British, it's all about fucking. And all I have to say is you are so disgusting, Nigel. You're a 55-year-old insurance salesman from Sheffield, and all you want to do on your vacation is see a sign that says fucking. You should be ashamed. The town changed its name to Fugging in hopes that all of this attention would stop. And I know how you feel, Fugging Austria. I'm with you. This show used to be called the Pinche Gringo Show, but thanks to multinational corporations and Karen, our friendly liberal shamer, for ruining the fun. But in other news, we are following this week, so you don't have to. The ruling party in Hungary eliminated constitutional protections for gays, voted to end recognition of transgendered people, and would not allow Hungary to participate in Eurovision because they said it's too gay.
A jungle out there, so hold on tight.
I don't. What are they talking about? Too gay? Just artistic. So one of the members of this party and a member of parliament who has been chastised for his anti-gay rhetoric abruptly resigned after he was caught this week in a 25-man gay orgy in Brussels, which was also in violation of COVID restrictions. He tried to escape, but was quickly caught with his pants down, figuratively speaking. They also found a bunch of narcotics in his bag, which of course he said were not his, that he was holding them for a friend. He also said, "Don't tell my wife, don't tell my party. I promise I won't tell them, but I think it's a little too late." And it's just another example of the more homophobic you are, the more likely you'll be found in a 25-person gay orgy. In tech news, Best Buy announced it was exiting the Mexico market last week amid declining sales. Goodbye, nice, spacious stores with friendly staff. Hello, Juan's Teléfonos en la Plaza de Tecnología. The artist Drake announced yesterday he was releasing a new scented candle that smells like, well, him. He announced that his smooth musk fragrance is introspective as an interpretation of your beautiful self, yet extroverted as how you would want others to see your bold and brilliant self. I'm wondering if there are going to be other Drake smells like Drake after gym candle, Drake after sex candle, Drake after hugging a stray dog candle, or of course, whatever happens up north usually happens here in Mexico. So for example, good barbecue. So how about an AMLO candle? Smells like an old man who drives a Volkswagen and maybe didn't have the energy to shower today because showering every day is privileged and elitist. Or how about a Luis Miguel candle? Smells exactly like Michael Jackson. Or how about a squeegee guy scented candle? Because there's nothing like the smell of the fresh air of Mexico City on the body of a guy washing windows all day. Smells delicious. So we just can't get enough Trump out of our minds. It's like that time you saw grandma naked and you're doing everything to get it out. Get it out, grandma. I can't see it. And she still stays there. Well, same thing with Trump. He just won't go away. And we're still waiting on pins and needles to see if he finally admits that his show is over. This may never happen, but we don't know if he will attend the inauguration, if he has to be escorted out of the White House by the Secret Service or whatever. The campaign's lawyers are still continuing their efforts to submit frivolous lawsuits that don't have any evidence or sense, and judges are responding with scathing responses that are basically telling the campaign that they are wasting the judiciary's time and resources. He is attacking prominent Republicans that have supported him in the past, and he's very compelling and believable on TV, like the interview last week on Fox Business News.
Characterize what took place.
Well, first of all, I have to start by saying the whole world is watching, and nobody can believe what they're saying. And you have leaders of countries that call me and say, that's the most messed up election we've ever seen.
None of this is true at all. Even his own attorney general said that there was nothing they found that would make a difference in the outcome of the election. The problem here is that the more legal routes Trump pursues, the more speeches, TV interviews, and tweets he makes, he is having a dangerous impact on the American democracy, on a peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the other, and most importantly, on voting systems. According to a poll taken by The Economist and YouGov, 88% of Trump voters believe that Biden did not legitimately win the election. That's crazy. So what happens if 88% of the 70 million that voted, roughly 61 million on January 20th, when Biden is actually sworn in, believe that he's not legitimately the president? Now, our viewers watching this in Mexico understand this well. They understand what happens when a candidate loses and claims fraud, organizes protests, and does everything he can to delegitimize the election results, whether they're true or not. So we have with us the former director of the National Electoral Institute, Luis Carlos Ugalde, to talk more about the 2006 Mexican presidential election between Andrés Manuel López Obrador, Felipe Calderón, and how it relates to what's happening in the U.S. today. Thank you so much for joining us, Luis Carlos. I really appreciate you being on the show here. Talk to us about 2006. For some of us who may not remember or not know about it, between AMLO and Felipe Calderón. And we're going to talk about how that's really very similar to what's happening here today with Donald Trump.
Thank you, Dan, for inviting me to this show. And yes, both scenes, Trump today and AMLO in 2006, look very similar. In 2006, for those of you that don't remember, AMLO was defeated by a very, very razor margin, half a percentage point, and Felipe Calderón was the winner. And López Obrador never conceded. Even today, he continues to say that he lost because of a fraud. 6 years after that, he said the same, but he never made any proof of that. Very similar to Mr. Trump, what he did was to claim fraud. As he's a populist leader, as Trump is, then his followers tend to believe whatever he said, as today with Mr. Trump. And then what Mr. AMLO did in 2006 was to choose selectively some facts, some events, some numbers, and from that build the idea that was a general fraud. Of course, in this size of an election like Mexico's in 2006, there is always the possibility that in certain places something happened, an irregularity occurred, but that doesn't make a fraud, a general fraud. But this type of leaders select 3 or 4 facts, and from then on, they build a case. And then when people believe there is some sort of fraud, then they use that fact to say, you see, people don't believe in the election result, therefore there was a fraud. And today what happened with you in the US, it's very sad because these 88% of Trump voters will always believe that. And this is really a damage to the democratic system as it was done to Mexico's in 2006.
It's amazing. And I guess if AMLO was on a Scooby-Doo episode and at the end they tried to find out who he was and they take his mask off, Donald Trump would be there, right? They're kind of like the same type of people. So talking about that so that's what happened in the 2006 election. I know there's a lot of stories about the Occupied Reforma for a couple of months. He had a shadow government, right? That he appointed his ministers. This is just something that Trump hasn't done yet. And I don't know if he's going to do that. Hopefully he won't do that. But I want us to focus on 2012 in the election with AMLO ran again and Peña Nieto ended up winning that election. What effect did the 2006 results have on that 2012 election in this country?
Well, indeed, López Obrador was in a declining force in those years. But again, in 2012, he was close to win the election. If the campaigns had been longer for 4 or 5 weeks, then López Obrador would have won in that year. But his luck began to emerge again by 2016 or 2017, when the administration of Mr. Peña Nieto began to decline. And the corruption of that administration was something that helped López Obrador a lot. So in 2018, and this is amazing, López Obrador has said, even as he is already president of Mexico, he has said that he won despite the attempt of INE, the Electoral Commission, to make fraud on him. So he continues to claim that the electoral authority is trying to make some sort of a trick on him. And remember this, probably in next year's election, López Obrador is going to argue again that some sort of fraud is going to be made against Morena if Morena doesn't show up so well in the polls as in 2018.
That's incredible. So do you believe that what Donald Trump is doing now, which as you're pointing out, there's so many different parallels to his actions and what López Obrador do. Can you foresee this happening in the U.S. in 2024? Well, what do you think is going to happen, and how are the institutions going to be affected by Trump's actions right now?
Trump is going to continue for the rest of his life to claim there was a fraud. He will never concede that he lost the election. This narcissist personality like Trump and López Obrador never admit any mistake in their lives. So they have to blame someone else for what happens when they lose something. And this is López Obrador and this is Trump. So for the rest of his life, Mr. Trump is going to accuse the elites and the authorities and even his political party. And he may run again in 2024. I hope he cannot, but he will continue to do that. But that's not the problem. Mr. Trump will be away someday. The problem is the perception on a large part of the population. The problem is the polarization that this creates. And the problem is that democracy is weakened by this type of beliefs and by this type of actions. This is dishonesty. This is disloyalty to the system. This is contrary to what used to make your democracy strong. The fact that everybody conceded, that everybody respected the rules of the game, and this is a completely game changer, because in the future many politicians will see that simply not recognizing the winner is a way out and one of the means to continue a political career.
Absolutely. So you're looking at the American electoral system right now, and what's interesting is that the Mexican electoral system, or the election system, has been lauded around the world as being a very great institution here in Mexico. What does the United States need to do in order to get better at their electoral process, and what does Joe Biden need to do right now to deal with Donald Trump, how Calderon had dealt with AMLO in 2006?
There are two types of things that you could do in your country. One is to improve the standards of electoral logistics, because there is so many different ways to organize local elections, from one county to the other county, from one state to the other state. There is such level of fragmentation of electoral logistics, electoral administration, that it becomes really crazy to understand different modes of counting votes and admitting certain types of voter ID in one place different to another. So I understand that you live in a federal system with a very local perception and approach to organizing politics from the county level. But at least I would say that you need to standardize certain procedures so that there is more certainty and more understanding on how this works, because it is precisely the different modes of organizing elections from one place to the rest that made Mr. Trump able to claim fraud, saying things that was not appropriate, were not true, but people don't understand how the system works. The second is more about representation in the US. I cannot believe how you appropriate seats to the Electoral College in a system that it is not proportional to how much weight each state has. If I lived in California, I would feel very bad because I would never made a difference in the US system. And I would say that you should change that system. I think that would be that is impossible to do that, but I think you are living in a system 2 centuries old, and you don't have the ability at this moment to change that. But in the future, I would say in the next decades, America should change that to make its democracy strong again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny too. Some of my Mexican friends have been constantly telling me in the last couple of months that all of the things that they've been hearing in the American system are things that they were used to hearing in the Mexican system, and so surprised that American democracy has gotten to this point. So what do you think about the upcoming elections? Just off topic a little bit, because I think a lot of people are curious about that. Do you feel like 2021 is going to be a safe election here in Mexico?
It's going to be a safe election from the perspective of the National Electoral Institute, of course, but it's going to be very dangerous from the perspective of the Mexican president. Our president is going to intervene, speaks a lot, cannot be quiet, and then that is going to create a context in which there is going to be a lot of conflict. In Mexico, public servants, government officials need to be quiet. That is written in the Constitution precisely because in 2006, López Obrador, then candidate to the presidency, claimed that Mr. Fox, who was president at the time, was talking a lot. And then we changed the Constitution to respond to this request by López Obrador. And now López Obrador is talking every day about elections. He's accusing his adversaries, and that is going to create a lot of noise. So I assume that the INE, the Electoral Institute, is going to organize the election very well, very professionally, but the president is going to make a lot of noise. And if Morena, the political party in power, loses seats in comparison to 2018, as we think it's going to lose, then many members of Morena, many candidates of Morena, losing candidates will claim fraud, and that is going to be a shame.
Really, it's going to be interesting, and we'll stay tuned to that here at the Gringo Show. Luis Carlos Ugalde, former head of the INE, the National Election Institute. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Really appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Dan. Good luck.
Thank you. All right.
Congrats.
Argentina and the soccer world was in shock last week when news broke about the passing of a national treasure and one of the best players that ever lived, Diego Maradona. The country has been in mourning, and many in Mexico, as Maradona spent a significant amount of time here. First, with his famous Hand of God goal in the '86 World Cup in Mexico, followed by which is arguably the best goal in the history of the World Cup.
That Maradona has been able to do. And he's hurting England again here. It's a brilliant run. It's one of the one.
What a goal. Maradona also served as a stint as the coach of the Dorados de Sinaloa here in Mexico in 2018. So for more on this and the impact that Maradona had on Argentina, we have on the show Franco Frillochi, Argentinian in Mexico, Kenneth Smith, who was at that famous 1986 game in Mexico City. Thanks so much, both for you. Kenneth, I know you're watching your Cruz Azul game right now with the other eye, so good luck to you against the Pumas. Franco, we finally have you on the show. How are you feeling today, Franco? I know Argentina's devastated. Tell me about your friends and family and the mood in Argentina right now.
How are you, Danny? Thank you for having me in the show. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, it's a very sad feeling. You know, I'm here in Mexico too, so I'm not with the people during the day, but I have friends that talk to me about being crying the day hearing the news of his death. So everyone is very sad. My uncle also texted me that he couldn't believe it. There was a TV show that was a sport TV show that was on, and they were having messages on the WhatsApp, receiving the news of the Maradona dying, and all of them got like cold shocked. And yeah, it's just like very, very, very sad feeling, and a feeling of emptiness, definitely, of having someone very important not being there anymore.
Yeah, I understand. Now, Kenneth, I read this on your Facebook last week, and it was unbelievable that you were at that 1986 game where Maradona had his two famous or infamous, I guess, depending on what country you're from, goals. The last one that I mentioned was probably one of the greatest goals of all time, and this goal right here.
That's a poor clearance. Maradona with Shilton. Looked like handball, that. Maradona's celebrating, and the goal's going to be given.
So this is pretty shocking. Tell me about what was going on in the stadium at that moment when that goal was made. Did people know it was a handball? Did people think about it? Tell me about the scene that day.
Well, it was really incredible, Dan. I mean, you know, I was 16 years old. I had gotten tickets with my dad, and I was complaining about the seats we had gotten because we were sitting on the second row behind the English goal. Little did I know that at minute 51, there was going to be that incredible play that you showed, and 4 minutes later, what is considered the goal of the century. It was amazing because when it actually happened and Maradona came up and clearly hit the ball with his hand, the first feeling that people got behind the goal was a sense of laughter. I heard a lot of people cracking up and saying, wow, you know, this guy has some nerve to do that. And then when all of us saw the Tunisian referee starting to run towards the center of the field, signaling that it was a goal, there was a tremendous roar that started on the other side of the stadium, and then people just could not believe it. I mean, it was obviously a handball, but the referee got covered because Shilton was a big guy. He was 6'2". Maradona was about, I don't know in feet, but he was 1.60 meters more or less. So there was no way he could beat him with his head. And then the worst was the sideline referee never raised his flag. And in fact, for a couple of seconds, the referee and the sideline judge discussed things, but it was for naught. I mean, it was an incredible play. Unfortunately, it's a play that's remembered and it's a great happening. I mean, I think it was awful what happened. I mean, I was one of the few people rooting for England at that game. But then again, he turned right around and 4 minutes later scored perhaps the most beautiful game in World Cup history. So, you know, he was a great player. We had to bid him farewell. It's unfortunate that he has left us. And of course, Mexico 86 was his World Cup. That's where he really shone, I think, the most in all of his career, which was an amazing career.
Absolutely. Now, I'm looking at Franco's face right now and hearing about you explain that inside the stadium. How does Argentina see that goal, that handball? Was like, oh, luck, but it was a hand ball, or is there some denial there? What was that impression, Franco?
Look, guys, first of all, I wanted to comment on what Kenneth talked about the hand goal. You know, Maradona was giving an interview publicly. He was being filmed and recorded, and they asked him about the hand goal, and he answered. It was in a university in UK. So the journalists were British, and they asked him how did he feel about that goal, and he answered very smartly, as he always did, because he was a very, very sharp man back in the day. Lately in his life, he was a bit slower or whatever, but he answered that the only World Cup that England won, they won 1-0 in the final with a goal that struck the post, didn't cross the line, and bounced out, and the referee gave it as goal. So that's the only World Cup that England ever won, and they are now criticizing us for the handball of Maradona. I think he has a very, very fair point.
I guess the VAR should have been used in '86, and then maybe things would have been a bit different, right? To review that again. Now, to both of you, because this is a very political-leaning show, I want to ask you about what the crowd was like that day, because there was an undercurrent in that game where it was 2 years after the war of the Falkland Islands, or the Islas Maldives, para respecta for our Argentinian friend here. What was the atmosphere like in the stadium, Kenneth? Was there more English fans, more Argentinian fans? Was there tension? Was there anger? How was it that day?
Well, the atmosphere was just electric. I mean, you have to understand that the game was played on a Sunday, on June 22nd, and on Saturday, the 21st, Mexico had been eliminated unfairly against Germany in Monterrey. So all of Mexico turned to root for Argentina, except a few of us who, for family reasons, where I've always rooted for England. So it was a very exciting game. It was packed. It was 115,000 people. I would say a majority rooting for Argentina. But the fans from England are very famous, especially in the 80s, for their bravado. The violence that had taken place in the European soccer fields was legendary, not just in England, but in Germany, in Italy. And also the Barras Bravas from Boca Juniors and other groups from Argentina that get very excited, violent at times, were all there. And I swear to you, I have never seen so many soldiers, Mexican military, both outside and inside the stadium. From the get-go, we had to arrive about an hour and a half before the game kicked off. The place was packed already. Back in the day, they would oversell the stadium, so there were no stairs, no staircases in case of an emergency. So that added a sense of danger to the whole thing. And they spent the entire time, both sides, burning flags from each other. So the political tension was there. Both teams at the beginning of the World Cup were asked not to make any political statements or actions. I think they stuck to that, and it speaks well for both sides. But definitely that tension was in the air. The violence spilled over after the game outside the stadium. More than 70 arrested. And overall, for a 16-year-old who loves soccer, it was just an incredible experience, as you can imagine.
That's incredible. Let's go back. We have a couple of minutes left, but Maradona spent some time here in Mexico at the end of his career. So he became the coach of the Dorados de Sinaloa, which was a second division team. Why, Franco? Why did he make this move?
Look, we are friends, Dan, and we speak during the week. And you mentioned that to me. And I was trying to do a little research about why he was in Dorados. Like, nobody knows why he came to Dorados. Like,
Culiacan has the best girls, or,
No, listen, I think
the best coke.
Definitely, no? Danny, definitely he got well paid, because I don't know why. Definitely he must have gotten a very great contract. But also it's a funny fact, because he right before that he had signed with a Belarusian team to be the vice president. It was all announced. They were filming his house. He was like in a tank in Belarus, and out of nowhere he quitted that and came to Dorados. What he said in an interview, that he has a friend that is El Turco Mohamed, which is a very famous Argentinian player and coach here in Mexico, that he talked very good about Sinaloa and about Culiacan, and that got him into coming here. But I don't really believe that theory that much.
Kenneth, do you have any comments about Maradona in Mexico and what Mexico and what's the relationship between those two?
Well, what I've heard is that, of course, Kenneth, I think that... Sorry. I think that Maradona, obviously remembers Mexico '86, the shining moment in his career in the World Cup. He did a lot with Napoli. He was already great ever since he was a youngster. I saw him play the Youth World Cup in 1979 in Tokyo. He was 19. He was incredible. But the pinnacle of his career, at least internationally in the World Cup, was in Mexico. So he has good memories from Mexico. He obviously got offered a very, very juicy contract here with Dorados. He almost had them win the championship, which is amazing, in the second division, and to maybe even the possibility of rising to the first division. So I think he always looked at Mexico with good memories. Unfortunately, as we all know, the rest of his life had a lot of ups and downs. Tragic events occurred, and the way he conducted his life, a lot of people could look down on it. I think he's also a bit of a victim of these great superstars that, come up from very humble origins. They make a lot of money. They're very successful worldwide, and many times they don't know really how to deal with that. So he was by far one of the best players ever, along with Pelé, who I did not see play. And I think he had quite a bit of love for Mexico, and Mexicans always recognize that he was one of the best players ever to set foot on the field.
All right, Franco, you got 30 seconds left.
Okay. No, I'm just very amazed about that Kenneth was at the stadium.
Of course.
And they go, and he was rooting for the other team. I cannot believe that.
Franco is the last name Smith. I mean, come on. Like, if it was Velasquez or Rodriguez, yeah, maybe.
I'm very sorry, Kenneth.
My grandfather was British. We always suffered twice in the World Cup, right? Because we see Mexico and then they lose, and then England loses because they always play below their potential. So I suffered twice. I always have two heartbreaks during the World Cup. So I never changed it.
And
Listen,
one more thing, Danny.
What?
One more thing.
Good thing we're on national TV and we don't have commercial coming up. So one more thing, Franco.
Just that. For all Argentina and for me, after Maradona died, it feels like an emptier world or existence. That's the deep truth.
Yeah, I understand, man. So my best to you and my best to Argentina. Hopefully you guys will recover and have a second Maradona coming soon. And Kenneth Smith, the most versatile guest that the Gringo Show has ever had. You're a trade negotiator, you're a Steelers fan, you're a Cruz Azul fan, and now you're the guy that went to the stadium in '86. We got to find something else. Maybe your band can be the show band in the future.
Yeah, we can play some rock and roll too.
Great. Franco Frillochi and Kenneth Smith, thank you guys so much for being on the show.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Before we end the show tonight, you may notice that our lovely Gringo Show correspondent, Laila Garcia Mora, is not with us. This is because she is now the proud mother of a beautiful set of twins, born last Sunday here in Mexico City, presenting for the first time on TV, Marek and Hannah, weighing in at 1.8 kilograms each. And I think they're so lucky to have two wonderful parents. And by the way, that is not Laila. That is Laila's beautiful husband, Eric. And they're so happy today. So we're going to miss her for a while on the show, but we hope to have Laila back with us soon on the air. So that does it for this edition of The Gringo Show. Please join us next week for our season finale before we take a long break for the holidays. So please join us. Also follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well. Until then, be safe, be happy, and see you next week.
Pinche Gringo, Mexico is laughing thanks to you. We like to watch you dance salsa and listen to your bad Spanish too. We like to watch you almost die from spicy food.